But the problem I think that we're facing, and the thing that we're experiencing in state after state, is that the infrastructure we have today is not keeping pace with the growth and the evolution of the economy. It's still a system that's rooted a couple of decades ago, and it just hasn't been updated like some of these other areas of policy have been updated. So there's a bunch of problems. One, particularly as it relates to the transportation program in many of these states, is that we're running out of money, and that the revenue sources that have historically paid for the transportation infrastructure in state after state is shrinking, and that's really hitting these states very, very hard. Part of the problem is that we're still heavily reliant on the gasoline tax. In state after state, I think 35 or 40 of the states are still mostly reliant on gasoline taxes to fuel their transportation programs. Excuse the pun, I didn't mean that. But still, it's based on these sources of, on these unsustainable sources that we know are just not going to be just as robust as they are in the future as they are today. People are driving much less. When they do drive, they're driving more fuel-efficient vehicles, driving electric vehicles. All these things are throwing off less money in terms of the gas tax. And most states haven't even raised the gas tax in 20 years. So just inflationary pressures have kind of whittled that down as well. So it's no wonder that in fiscal year 2010, half the states reduced their transportation programs. Another dozen were planning to do that this year. And that's actually better than it could have been. We know that a lot of the federal money, we talk about the stimulus, all these things helped states keep afloat for the last last 18 months. They did a bunch of different things, bonding, debt mechanisms, all these kinds of things have been employed, but I think we're kind of tapping all that out now. We've got to think about something else in order to fund the next round of transportation investments for the future. But as we like to say, it's not just that the system is broke and that it has no money, but it's broken. And as a policy apparatus and a decision-making apparatus, it's just not giving us the right kind of projects that we need for the 21st century economy. We know that money isn't really being spent in an economy-enhancing way. It's still spread around very thinly, based really on political priorities in many cases, as opposed to those things that matter to economic growth and economic competitiveness. We don't really emphasize metro areas in many states. Again, spreading it around doesn't recognize these are our economic engines, and these should be prioritized for all those different reasons. The state transport departments do certain things very well. They do emphasize safety, rehabilitation, maintenance of the existing system, but getting them to think outside of these silos to all these things we're talking about here, I think has proven to be very difficult. It's going to be one of our challenges, I think, going forward. They're certainly not attuned right now to all these things around the next American economy, things like exports, innovation, all things we've been talking about. I think some states are trying to reorient themselves, and we're seeing some innovation that's happening. As Bruce mentioned, I think a lot of this stuff is going to be pushed forward to the federal level, but a lot of states are going to have to start this themselves. California does allocate money down directly to the metro area, understanding that these places really do drive their state economy. They link up environment, housing, transport, land use, all these things that we all know transport's connected to. California is starting to do that on the state level. Virginia is starting this experiment around using benefit cost analyses to choose their transportation priorities. I think we're seeing some hiccups along the way. You can measure the wrong things and be in worse shape than you were when you started, but they're trying, and I think that's going to have some impacts on some other states. Georgia's Economic Development Authority and their Transport Authority are getting together to think through some of these logistics investments that they're trying to make, some of these giant global challenges. If they're widening the Panama Canal, that's going to change freight movement up the eastern seaboard. What impact does that have on transport investments? They're trying to work that out on the state level now. Michigan, their Office of Public-Private Partnerships, trying to make sure this isn't just about transportation. So there's a lot of things, I think, that are happening in terms of thinking forward. Pennsylvania was clearly a leader in terms of trying to make sure that the entropic nature of other state subsidies was kind of corralled and that we were emphasizing existing places, thanks to Governor Rendell. I think some of those things are starting to change. But all this is still really the exception rather than the rule. There's a bunch of good ideas that are out there, but in order for states really to make sure that infrastructure is part and parcel of the next American economy, we still have, I think, a much longer way.